You're listening to The Mirror. I'm your host, Sophia Ha. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with Dr. Stacey Shillington, ND and founder of Naturopathic Beauty. Now, I just have to start this off by saying, if you do not know this woman, you are going to want to. Stacey is internationally renowned for helping women to age gracefully and heal their acne naturally and holistically. She's been featured on eTalk, on US Weekly, Toronto Star, to name a few. And today I get to actually pick her brain on something that I'm particularly passionate about. And I like to refer to this as the 3 S's. And those are substance, sleep, and stress, and how they impact our nervous system, our skin health, and the way we age. So with no further ado, welcome, Stacey.
Oh, Sophia, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. And, we've known each other for a while, and I've been watching you. I know you've been watching me, and we love each other. So this is going to be a super great conversation.
I'm so excited. For those of you that are a little bit familiar with my work, I teach holistic face care. And when Stacey and I met, we were talking about all things from skin health to face yoga. And so our work really complements each other. And you're gonna see that a little bit more. So let's dive right in. For those that don't know you, Stacey, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you get started on this path of skin health and naturopathic beauty?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the main things that I do is I treat acne. And that is because when I was in my late 20s, I went off the birth control pill and my skin blew up in acne. And this was the early 2000s. I really had no idea what was happening. Obviously we couldn't turn to Instagram. We couldn't even turn to the internet. I saw my doctors. All they said was, take medication. I didn't want to do that. So I ended up discovering naturopathic medicine. I went back to school to become a naturopathic doctor, and the rest is really history. I learned how to heal the body from within. And that's when I really, I just have this love affair with the skin. The skin is my very favorite organ. It reflects everything that's going on inside of our body. And, I love what I do so much. But yeah, I was drawn into naturopathic medicine and healing the skin because of my own skin issues.
And that's such a sensitive thing for people, right? Like specifically our face. And when it comes to things like acne, it can be so painful, but also there's that emotional aspect of not truly seeing yourself, right? Because you're kind of covered up with spots and just not being able to really see yourself. And I think it really shows. I mean, look at your gorgeous face. So, and Stacey has really helped an insane amount of people. Like if you see her before and afters, it's really incredible what you do. If there was one specific thing that you would say really affects our skin health, maybe like above and beyond anything, it could be top 3 things, but if there was number 1, what would you say that is?
The nervous system. For sure. And I know just before we started this podcast, we kind of were talking about it a little bit, but when our nervous system is in survival, our bodies cannot heal. We are not in a state to heal. So, I see this time and time again. And like you said, acne is a very painful situation, emotionally, mentally. My patients come to me and they don't want to leave their homes. They don't want to be seen by the world. Their nervous systems are in survival. The first thing I have to do is I have to get them out of their survival nervous system into their parasympathetic nervous system. And that's when I get the best healing. Otherwise, if your nervous system is stressed out, you can try a million different things. Healing's going to be difficult. It isn't until you soften that the healing really comes easily. So that I would say is the number top 1 thing. There are definitely other things, but I'd say that takes the cake.
I would say that takes the cake too. And I was actually doing an interview with the Human Optimization podcast a few months ago. And that was the thing that I said as well. So it's kind of interesting that we're both touching on that thing because people don't realize the impact of a dysregulated nervous system. They don't necessarily, unless they're fully in it and it's been a while and they're getting some help, but often they don't connect the dots between how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis, that cortisol, and how it's affecting your sleep, your gut health, et cetera, which we can get into a little bit more because you have a lot more knowledge and wisdom in that area. But the fascinating thing to me is how the nervous system affects all those different aspects. For those that aren't familiar with the nervous system, you talked about needing to engage the parasympathetic nervous system. In quick layman's terms, can you share a little bit about what the parasympathetic nervous system is and how we would actually engage it?
So there are basically two different states. There's the fight or flight nervous system. That's when you are geared up to fight or flight. Really, you are stressed. And then there's the rest and digest nervous system. That's where you are when you're able to digest, you're feeling relaxed, you're comfortable. This is actually our natural state. As human beings, we are meant to be relaxed. That's what our physiology is designed for. And we're only designed to be in this fight or flight nervous system periodically, once in a while. Say if we're like, and this is the example everybody uses, you're walking through the savannah and you see a lion or something. That's when this stress nervous system is supposed to kick in so that we can survive. But as it happens, we've created a situation for ourselves where we are chronically under stress. We're chronically in the state of stress. So it's really simple, the nervous system. There's two places to be. That's it. Sympathetic, parasympathetic, fight or flight, or rest and digest. That's it.
Mm-hmm. I've had some really interesting conversations as well with psychologists, meditation teachers about this. And the bit that I always get, I guess, confused or challenged about, and I'll speak from my own personal experience, but I'm sure there are so many women that can relate to this. My life specifically, so I'll speak about that because that's what I know best and an expert on, was really from a very young age full of a lot of stress, like maybe a little abnormally so. Of course, as humans, we all experience it. But yes, my childhood was particularly stressful, foster care, all of that. And then, I went through adolescence feeling very stressed, and I've got ADHD and all the fun things, I'm sure you could share a few things on that as well. But I've always found it really hard to get into that state of rest and digest. I'm able to access it, and particularly, with the face care rituals, with yoga, with mindfulness practice, it's helpful. But I do find myself majority of the time in that state of fight or flight. So I'm wondering, when somebody arrives at your door and they're, so stressed and their skin is showing it, and their life circumstantially, let's say, is full of stress, right? Let's say they've got a bunch of kids, they're maybe caring for their parent, maybe they've got a business, maybe the relationship that they have isn't perfect. How does one, what is the sort of the first step when there's just so much chaos circumstantially? How can we is it supplements? What does that look like?
No, it's not supplements. It's there's two different things that really need to be addressed. Number one, we need to release emotions that are repressed and trapped in the body. We need to do a lot of that work. And, breath work is my favorite way to do that. That's the way that I work with my patients, to just release emotion. And, it's like peeling layers of an onion. This is not something that happens right away. This takes time. So, establishing a good breathwork practice or something like that just to release. But that's not it. Then we also need to take a look at thought patterns. And this is, because by the time we are age 35, 90% of our thought patterns are automatic. So we are just by default thinking certain things. And a lot of these things that we're thinking do not serve us. A lot of the times we're thinking about things in the past, we're revisiting thought patterns that were maybe, established when we were very young, established when we were in trauma. And we need to rewrite those thought patterns. We need to shift neural pathways. So, combining, releasing emotions as well as, rewiring neural pathways. These are the two ways that I really use with my patients to overcome a lot of the stress that they're under and transition them into more that restful state. And, I'm not going to lie, it's work. It's work and it's awareness and it's every single day, like what are my thought patterns? Catching yourself, thinking things that are not serving you and taking the time to release and do your breath work. And EFT is another good one. Tapping, I use that a lot with my patients too, especially if you have an emotional state or if you have a thought pattern that's really stuck. Using EFT, which is tapping, can help release that. So those are really kind of the areas that I use for my patients. I mean, it's, as you know, it's not as simple as take a bubble bath or say no. Then
This is why I love your approach so much. And that's why, in the intro, I was explaining that yours is a holistic approach, right? Because there are a lot of naturopaths, for example, that just focus on the body solely, and they're not really focusing on that entire aspect, particularly when it comes to the nervous system. And I love what you said about it really is work, right? Because we all want that sort of easy pill to just swallow and for things to be okay. But as you said, at 35 years old, we've got, the majority of all of our thinking patterns already sort of cemented. Luckily, we have the ability to shift those, but it becomes so automatic. So often it feels like such a hard thing. And let's be honest, rewiring our neural pathways isn't an easy thing, but it is possible. It is possible.
Yeah. And, I said it's work earlier. And, I think I'd like to reframe that and say it's a lifestyle. Like rewiring your neural pathways, it's a lifestyle. It's something that you do every single day. You start to just, automatically ask yourself, is what I'm thinking actually true? Is this the truth? And backing up and looking at things. And yeah, it's something that we have to incorporate every single day, especially after the age of 35.
So that essentially what you're saying is when it comes to our nervous system, we're really having to do a combination of things. One is the mental aspect of observing our thoughts and really sort of checking ourselves for those automatic habitual thinking patterns. And then there's the other aspect, which is something that I talk about a lot, which is the releasing the emotions, right? So, we both work with the face. We see so much that's stored here, right? And so I'm constantly talking about releasing tension and how emotions are stored in the body, and the face is a part of that body. And more than anywhere, right? We emote from the face. Like this is the only place that we have these sort of mimetic muscles. So this brings me to another question. We're talking about the nervous system, and I'm thinking specifically about what are the things that we tend to do, often blindly or not thinking about it, in order to cope, in order to quote unquote soothe pain, right? And my first thought is substance. My first thought is how often we'll go for that glass of wine. You shared a post a while back about giving up alcohol. I'm not sure exactly how long it's been now. Can you share a little bit about why you made that decision, how that affected you, and how it ties into our nervous system health?
Oh gosh, that's such a great story. And, it wasn't my decision actually. My husband is an alcoholic for sure. And about 13 years ago, he got to a point where he could not do it anymore. He totally recognized that his drinking was getting out of hand. It was affecting the family. I mean, of course, I'd been seeing it for years. I thought he'd never stop drinking. I was just like, oh my God, he loves it way too much. But, he came home one night and he's like, it's over. I'm done drinking. And I was so grateful. I was so it was kind of like, I was like, oh my gosh, I have my life back. And so, of course, it was true. And so I was like, well, you know what? I'm just going to stop drinking too. Like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to drink in front of him. Like, this is far too important for our family, for our life. So I just quit drinking along with him. So it wasn't premeditated at all. It was just like that day, I'm like, okay, I'm done. And what happened next was really shocking to me. Not shocking, but just had such an impact on my physiology. Number one, I started sleeping again. And I had been a chronic insomniac. I don't think I slept at all during my 30s. I really don't. Part of it was the stress in my relationship. That was very stressful for me. But part of it too was drinking. So the alcohol was affecting my nervous system. It was, affecting my ability to detox. And when, the thing about alcohol is that it's really hard on our detoxification system. One of the metabolites of alcohol is so poisonous that our body basically puts everything else on hold so it can deal with this metabolite called an aldehyde. And so this just causes a backup of toxins in our body. So if you're drinking on a regular basis, you're toxic. You're just toxic. And so once I was able to move those toxins through my body, I felt so much better. My nervous system relaxed. It really did. It made a difference. My skin got way clearer. My brain became clearer. And I just became happier overall. It was a really, really big difference for me. And I would never go back to drinking. Like if I go to a party, if I go to somebody's house for dinner and they have alcohol, I always think nobody could pay me enough money to have a drink because I feel so good without it that there's nothing that could convince me to even have a glass of wine. It's that dramatic for me.
What a huge difference. And just hearing how impactful it's been on your whole life, for both you and your husband. Let's talk a little bit more about, I'm curious to know a little bit more about the physiology aspect of alcohol, because you mentioned the sleep impact. I mean, anytime, even if I just have a glass of wine, which I don't do very often, but when I do, I am my heart's racing, I'm not sleeping, or I'm waking up throughout the night. And of course, we'll talk about sleep in just a second, the impact that has on our health and skin health. But in regards specifically to that detox aspect of when we're drinking, we're not able to properly detox. What is it specifically that is impacting our skin directly from alcohol? What are the specific things that we tend to see over and over and over again? And what are the things that we can expect to not see, I guess you could say, once we've given alcohol up?
So like I was saying, when you're drinking alcohol, it's creating a backlog of toxins in the body. So the liver's not able to process everything because it's basically saying, okay, this is an emergency. We're stopping all our regular work so that we can make room to detoxify the metabolites of alcohol. So that's what's going on. But here's the thing. The skin is actually the largest organ of detoxification in the body. And if other organs are overworked, if they're too busy, then the skin is kind of like the backup detox organ. So it's going to take up the slack of what our regular detox pathways cannot handle. So when you're drinking on a regular basis, your skin is going to be handling more of the detoxification work, and it's going to show up, acne, lines, wrinkles, pigmentation, all of it, dullness, more sun damage. The skin is going to take the brunt of the poor detoxification. So, that's one of the main reasons why alcohol affects the skin so much.
I think it's really important for people to understand that, because it's okay, the nervous system, and often that, again, as usual, tends to be on the back burner, right? But often the second we hear it's going to affect the way we look, the way we age, it suddenly turns into a different experience for a lot of people. And who cares if it's the surface thing that pulls us in for our health, right? It doesn't matter what it is. But just reiterating what you're saying, you're essentially talking about the impact of this toxin that we're putting into our body. The skin gets the brunt of it, and it's reflected, right? And so I like to always say, when our body's constantly talking, and we've got to listen. And sometimes often it shows up in that reflection of skin, all of those things that you mentioned. So I almost think of the skin as the organ that speaks the loudest, right? Because it's in your face, you're seeing it. Right?
Yes. Yeah, I call the skin the body's mirror because it does. It reflects what's going on in the body, and the nails and the hair as well.
Yes.
So those are really big indicators of our overall health.
Can you say that again? The skin is the mirror What was it?
The skin is a mirror of what's going on in the body. So it really reflects everything that's
Yeah.
going on.
Yes,
It
I
is.
love that, especially because we are on the mirror and it's something that, I talk about all the time, but I think you put that in such an eloquent way. So we talked a little bit about how alcohol affects the nervous system. First, let's kind of reiterate again. So we started with what is the number one impact, on our skin of all the things. We said nervous systems. We've just talked about the stress aspect. We've talked about how alcohol enhances that sensation of stress and our ability to sleep. So let's talk sleep. It seems more and more that more people are having a difficult time sleeping. I would associate that to a few different things. One, that things are quite stressful in the world for many people today, or most people. And the fact that we're on the screens so much more than we've ever been, right? Like scrolling in bed seems to be the natural thing, or picking up the phone first thing as soon as you wake up, right? It's like, please stop. How does sleep impact our skin health, our gut health, and our nervous system?
Okay, how does sleep impact our skin health? So, what happens is, there are skin cells that come to the surface every single day. Our skin naturally exfoliates, and that keeps us looking fresh and healthy. And when we do not sleep, our cells are not able to regenerate as efficiently. So, we're not going to be exfoliating optimally at all. Our skin health is not going to be there. In terms of gut, it's very same mechanism. The cellular regeneration is not going to be happening as efficiently because our body does not have that time to restore itself. And when we're not sleeping, we're usually in a state of stress. So we're going to be releasing excess cortisol, and cortisol is probably the most toxic compound that we can introduce into our body. So, there's excess amount of cortisol happening that's damaging every single organ system. Um, it just is overriding all over the body, between the lack of cellular regeneration and, the excess cortisol, not sleeping well is very detrimental to our beauty and our skin health.
Yeah. So essentially what you're saying, Stacey, is, there's the functional aspect of sleep that we all need, which is to wake up and feel like kind of normal, right? But in regards to specifically skin health and aging well, the bit that you touched on specifically in regards to cortisol is something that I talk about a lot. It's something that you talk a lot about, which is essentially cortisol gets in the way of us creating collagen. So it depletes our ability to create collagen. And as you've mentioned, we're talking cellular repair. So I think everybody notices when you've had a good night of sleep versus a not so good night of sleep. It can be a huge difference, like a 5-year difference showing up on your face, right? Is there a specific thing when, let's say, somebody's highly stressed, they're really struggling with sleep. Maybe they've got a lot going on. Again, they've got kids, etc. Is there something specific someone can start today to start helping them with getting a better night's rest?
Well, I'm going to share what really helps for me. Well, number one, you have to have the basics in place. We all know this. So stop your screen time like a couple hours before you go to bed, like a couple hours. We're not talking about 15 minutes. Like if you go to bed at 10, stop at 8.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, definitely. Have regular meals throughout the day. Because, when your insulin levels are not balanced, there's a likelihood of you not sleeping deeply because your body does not feel as though it's nourished properly.
That's kind of huge. Like I had no idea about that. I think for so many people, especially again, busy moms and it's a really common thing to skip meals.
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. Because it's actually cortisol's job to balance our insulin levels. That's one of cortisol's job. And when cortisol is dysregulated, when we're stressed, we're not able to regulate our blood sugar optimally. So having 3 solid meals every single day is going to help you sleep deeper. Absolutely. But you want to stop eating after about 7 p.m. So no eating just before you go to bed, but you have those 3 solid meals during the day. So that's a very important thing. The other thing is having a regular sleep time and wake time. That is so important. The body, the circadian rhythm loves nothing more than a schedule. So when we can get on a really, nice schedule for us, automatically our sleep is going to improve. And there's something called sleep efficiency. So if you go to bed at a certain time and you stay in bed for like 3 hours before you fall asleep, and then you sleep until like 10 a.m., your sleep efficiencies, all out of whack. What you want to do is you want to be in your bed for the least amount of time possible and get the maximum amount of sleep. So my suggestion is to wake up early at the same time every day. Even if you haven't slept all night, get up at 7 a.m. and do your day. Go to sleep at 10 p.m., get up at 7 o'clock a.m. and do this just to reset your sleep efficiency. This makes a huge difference. If I start getting up at different times in the morning, my sleep is a disaster. If I get up at the same time every single day, it makes a huge difference.
So, question about the circadian rhythm. Would you say that the circadian rhythm is more or less the same for most people? Like wake up with the sunlight, and then kind of go to bed at a reasonable hour? Or does it kind of vary from one person to the other? Like, is there a specific, you hear all these kinds of things like go to bed latest, be in bed sleeping latest by 10 and you want to be up by 5 or 6. And, you hear all this kind of information out there as to what is the ideal time to go to sleep and wake up. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so everybody's going to have a slightly different chronotype. And that's just, when what your sleep window is, what your best sleep window is. And the amazing thing is now that we have tools where we can actually track our sleep. And when we use these tools properly, we can get so much information. And this is going to inform us as to when we should go to bed, when we should wake up. We're going to start taking a look at our HRV, our heart rate variability, and understand what our stress levels are, if our body's recovered, if we need to do more recovery. And using a tracking tool, like I use the Oura Ring, this gives me so much information that it allows me to really custom design the sleep schedule that works for me and keeps me sleeping.
That's really great information to know, because I think that, for some people, they can almost get overwhelmed, with something like an Oura Ring or other apps. So like, oh my gosh, there's so much information. But I think what you're saying specifically, just focusing on the sleep aspect and that particular information can really help someone to kind of gauge when it is that they go into, REM or, that's really, really interesting, because that was going to be my next question, which is, how does someone kind of gauge when their best sleep is going to be? And you're saying basically that these kinds of apps can be really helpful in that information.
Oh, it's the best. I mean, we are so lucky to be able to have access to this information. And I understand it can be overwhelming, absolutely. But if you work with a practitioner that understands and can interpret them for you, you're going to get a huge amount of success reclaiming your sleep, because it really, we can understand your chronotype. So for me, my best time to go to bed is 10:15. Like, I know that now. If I'm in bed by 10:15, I'm going to get a maximum amount of deep sleep. So I've gone from when I first started using an Oura Ring, I got maybe 23 minutes of deep sleep, in like 8 hours. Now I get 2 hours of deep sleep in 6 hours. So I've managed to actually shorten the amount of time I need to sleep, but maximize my deep sleep, maximize my REM sleep, increase my HRV. Like it's really phenomenal what we can do by using these metrics and understanding what's going on in our bodies.
Oh my goodness. This is not an ad by any means for the Oura Ring, but I'm going to have to go get that, because I've been thinking about getting it for the longest while and I just kept on putting it off. But I think it after everything you just shared, I'm like, this makes perfect sense. And we know exactly who I'll be going to help me read all of those. I'm having also a laugh, because one of the things that you said literally was the exact same thing my naturopath said. It was the exact same thing my Chinese doctor said. my TCM doctor, which was that the body loves routine. And my
Love.
naturopath was like, it's boring. She's like, it's boring, but your body is going to thank you. And it's been definitely something I struggle with. And I think so many, particularly women, struggle with, especially when it feels like the day never ends, right? It's like there's this thing, there's always something to be done, but it's like, okay, I'm just making up a hypothetical situation. Okay, I'd really like to have every one of those dishes done. But you know what? It's 9:45 and I need to simmer down, or 9 or 8 or whatever it is, because that just needs to be the number one priority. Because, let's be honest, the dish can be done tomorrow. Might be annoying to see, but it can be done tomorrow. And you're probably going to wake up feeling a lot better about it the next day.
Totally. You'll have way more energy to do the dishes. You'll have it in perspective too. You'll be like, it's normally a dish, instead of being like, the dishes aren't done. And I can say that because I've totally been there.
Yeah.
There's such a difference, a night that you sleep well, how you operate the next day, how you think the next day, how you look. Like, there's just no comparison.
And it's funny because people are always like, start your day, and how you start your day is going to impact the rest of your day, which is true. But if we were to really take a look at it, we need to end our day properly in order to start the next day properly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is so true. And I think just, being strict with ourselves and being like, no, it's time to go to bed. Like, this is the time I wind down. This is the time I start taking care of me. And just, making that as important as any other commitment in our lives.
This is like something that we need to just have on repeat, like maybe on our alarm clocks or something, like a pre-record, take care of you first. And it's something that most people struggle with. And again, I would say predominantly women, especially when there are so many other responsibilities. And I recently had a conversation with a client who has 3 kids, and she's a very successful business owner. So she's on the run and busy, busy, busy every day. And it doesn't stop. And, she's helping her husband with his business, and it goes on and on. And we were looking at, just starting off with some really, basic, sort of a night care routine, face care routine. And she said, "Oh, I just don't know how I'm going to do this." And I said, "Okay, well, we've made it 3 minutes." We've made it 3 minutes. And she's like, "I know, but I'm just concerned that I'm not going to actually get it in." And I said, "Listen, just like you care for your babies, you make sure that they eat properly, you make sure that they're in bed by whatever time so that they can wake up the next day and feel energized." I said, "You need to start taking care of yourself like you're your own baby." And it sounds kind of silly, but it's like, no, in actuality, that's what it is.
It's true. I mean, nobody else is going to do it for us. Nobody else is going to step in and start taking care of us. It's just not going to happen. We are the caretakers, so we have to take care of ourselves. And the better we take care of ourselves, the better we can take care of others. And that's the truth. As a mom, I know that when I take care of myself, my kids are happier. They're healthier, and so is my husband.
I think, it's such a frequent thing where there's this disconnect of, I have to take care of everybody and everything else first. And I know it sounds so cliche, we've heard it a million times, which is like, you've got to fill your cup before somebody else's. But truly, the way that we are able to show up or not show up in the world is totally indicative of how we are feeling on the inside, And so what you're saying there is just so poignant. So we've covered, I think, all the things that I wanted to dive into. I think I have one last question for you, which is, for the moms out there, and we're going to definitely have you back to dive into more, but just for this particular segment, for the moms out there that are struggling with doing all of the things, they're doing all the things, they're just having such a hard time doing basic self-care, like feeding themselves properly, getting to bed. If there was one suggestion that you could give them to start helping them come back to themselves and care for themselves first, what would that be?
Well, I don't know. This might sound really basic, but this is what helps me the most in my life. And that is meal planning. If if I do meal planning once a week, I get all the groceries I need. I do the prep that I need to do. I have everything organized and planned. Life is so much easier. And it's like night and day. Like the weeks I meal plan versus the weeks I don't meal plan are like, they're completely different. So that's the one thing because, for moms, cooking takes a lot of time. And when you get home at 4:30 and you're like, or 5 or 6 or whatever it is, and you're like, I wonder what we should have for dinner today. When that's the question on your mind, it's a disaster.
Right, because it's the rest of the evening is going to be dinner activity, right? Prepping the food, getting it on the plate, eating, doing the dishes.
Right. Or maybe just resorting to something really simple that's not nourishing at all. And you start to consume empty calories and you're not getting enough protein, you're not getting the nutrients that you require. And, it's all of that together. And it's just a really big chaotic mess in my house when that doesn't happen. So that's my number. Is that what you're expecting?
Actually, you know what? I love that because we need basic. We don't need some overall complicated thing, but it's amazing how one simple thing really can make a huge difference in regards to our relationship with time for ourselves, our relationship with time with our kids, all of that jazz. And even though I don't have kids, when I don't meal prep, oh my gosh, I am really all over the place. It really does make a night and difference. And I also, a night and day difference, but I also think when we have that set time where it's meal planning time, we can be a lot more intentional about what we're actually putting into those meals, and just making sure that we're hitting all of those different nutritional aspects that we want to be. Stacey, we're going to definitely have you back on because there's so many other topics that I want to pick your brain about. But for right now, Stacey, share with the listener where we can find you, how we can potentially work with you, and all that good jazz.
Great. So you can find me at naturopathicbeauty.com or on Instagram. My handle is at naturopathicbeauty. And yeah, I'm there. My main work is helping women heal acne, any skin issue, really, eczema, psoriasis. So if there's something going on with your skin and you want to heal it from within, definitely check me out.
Thank you so much, Stacey. You're just such a plethora full of wisdom and knowledge and just such a bright light. Thank you so much for being here today. It's been a true pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Sophia. This is so much fun. I love doing this.
Same. And we're going to do more of these talks. To the listener, thank you so much for being here. I hope that this conversation gave you a little bit of inspiration. I know it did for me. And until the next time, here's to you, seeing the real you.